listening to the Adventure Party for the third week of December 2020. This week, the party leveraged their past experience to show newer gamers how to start their RPG campaigns on the right foot. We're not old, we're aged, like fine whiskey. The Adventure Party, discussing tabletop and native gaming the Irish way.
Welcome to the party. I'm Savage.
I'm Liam.
And I'm Owen.
And thank you for joining us again, folks. We're going to do what has become known in the back office here as an evergreen this week. We're going to talk about something that is almost universally applicable because if you're listening to this podcast, you have probably, at some point, started playing a role-playing game. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be the most popular thing on the planet. It could be something homebrewed that you're just testing and hopefully going to kick on to Kickstarter one day, or somewhere in between. Could be fatal. Who knows? We don't judge. But everybody has had the experience, either as a GM or a player, of getting ready for a game that's about to start. Everyone's agreed to play, everyone's agreed in the system, everyone's agreed on some of the house rules, and you're about to start playing. Now, I'm joined by two old souls as far as this is concerned from both sides of the GM screen. So we're just going to spend a little bit of time today talking about what we like to do to get ready for games, now that we've gotten ready for so many of them. We no longer have the first jitters of our youth. We're calloused old adventurers at this point. So Liam and Hida are going to join me, and we're just going to rattle on for a little bit about what we like to do to get in the right frame when we're embarking on a new game. So Liam,
yep.
You've started a game or two in your time.
I have.
What do you like to do?
Well, I guess for me, if this is a new GM, I'd probably ask them this, and certainly as a GM, it's something I've done. I tend to tell my players, is like, look, we're not going to lock your characters in until maybe the fourth session. And that gives people ground, gives people license to try out a character, build a character, and it doesn't matter if they make a mess of it. Because then they can go, you know what, these stats don't line up like I thought they would. Can I rebuild that? And you go, yeah, no problem. So that to me is the number one thing you can do as a GM for players, but if you're playing with a new GM, maybe ask them, is that possible that we can do that?
Right, so and you're very lenient then, like you'll let the game get sort of a month under his feet and people can still say, not really feeling this guy, I want to change over to try a different...
I mean, if generally that kind of problem becomes apparent very quickly, and it's usually after the first, maybe the second session, but if you just say fourth session, then it covers somebody not being there 1 week, or maybe the lesser used powers. It could even be that by the fourth session, they're like, you know what, I took this ability and it still hasn't come up. Can I ditch it for a better one? Yeah, sure, whatever. It hasn't come up, so it hasn't impacted on the game whatsoever. I think that gives people a little bit more confidence when it comes to building characters. And an alternative I might suggest as well is you can ask your GM or ask around on players and forums and stuff like that. Find out for the system, where's the major pitfall? What are the key stats? If you don't have this stat, you're dead. If you don't have this skill, you're dead. You know, you're going to go play heavy gear. All right, well, do you have agility? And do you have decent agility? Because otherwise, when you go to pilot your mech, it's not going to work. Are you playing a healing guy? Okay, well, you need to make sure that your knowledge skill is up there as well. You know, there's big pitfalls in systems that may not be very obvious to you from reading the book, but experienced players, and the internet's full of them as well. Now, the internet is full of opinions, some good, some bad, but generally, people will steer you away from the obvious pitfalls.
If you hear it more than a couple of times, you're going to be like, maybe these internet people have a point.
Well, I mean, you can just look at some systems and you just look at it and go, that ability looks pretty good, and then it looks good and it looks good at first level. But again, you get a bit of experience under your belt and your character starts to progress, and that feat or ability hasn't scaled with it. So it looked good at first level, but then as your character increases in power, then it's rubbish, and it was just a dead point. Whereas maybe something that's less good at the start, but then progresses up with you, may be better in the long run.
How about you, Hida? You as lenient when it comes to?
Oh, absolutely. When you're starting out, let people you don't want people sitting there agonizing over their build for hours. Sure, let's start playing, or like computer games give you rebuilds for a reason. It's because it's easy to go, I think this stat does this. Oh, it actually doesn't. Ugh. And particularly RPGs, which often aren't terribly well written. The ability to go, no, guys, don't worry about it. Let's get playing. Let's get stuck in. We'll see where the problems are, and we can then restart. For prep, what I would usually do is I would start out by thinking about the game and getting excited about the concept of running the game. And go, what do I want to do in this game? is there content? Am I going to have to homebrew everything, or can I run some adventures? I really like running a pre-published adventure for the first couple of sessions because it lets me focus on the other stuff, like running the game and how does this work? How does stuff work? I will often read the core book twice, at least once, and then probably twice for emphasis in certain pages.
I think if you're running, you definitely need to do that. That's a hell of an ask for a player. Don't think you're going to get that out of people. I know when I'm playing a game, I would like to, I'd read maybe if there's a section on the kind of the stats, I'll read that. If there's a section on the skills, I'll skim that, and then I'll take a look at maybe the combat section and take a look at that, just so you kind of get an idea, because you can't really jump straight into the combat bit without knowing, whatever the conflict resolution bits are. If you don't know what the stats and skills are, you probably won't know how that might work out. Probably that's how I'd go at it as a player. But as a GM, definitely, I think you're right. You want that root book read twice.
It's funny, as a player, I've been in the same situation, and I'll get a hold of the core book, and I guess I'll rely on the table to sort of teach me how combat works, which I know is a little bit selfish, but I'll always read as deeply as I can in terms of the publicly available material about the setting, so that I kind of like the idea that you're going to try as a player to do some work to sell the fantasy at the table. It's not all the GM, so you should at least know what the name of the major city you're playing in is, or what the power structure is, so that you're not running around talking about appealing to the king in a democratic sort of anarchy, social, whatever. I like as a player to get informed about the world, and I'm happy enough to learn the system based on how the character how the character building end of the rules goes. That for me tends to tell me, at least in the broad strokes, how things are meant to work. But obviously it can shake out much differently. I
mean, for world building like that, some games do a good favour for you, and they do have a little section in the rulebook that says, okay, well, for inspiration, check out these movies or these books. These really set the tone for your cyberpunky games. It'd be like reading a romance, or watch, as we were discussing before this episode, Johnny Mnemonic.
I won't defend it, but I'll tell it it's okay and it's a good boy and it did nothing wrong.
But for Deadlands or a similar game, it could be Watch Bone Tomahawk or Ravenous, or similar movies like that, to really set you into the tone, because that's nearly as important as the rules themselves. If people get, okay, well, this is a high fantasy game, so a bit of swashbuckling and high magic is really what we expect, versus this is a real gritty game, so you turn up and you go to play WHFRP and you're surprised that you're a rat catcher who's having to roll for disease when you're expecting to be, bashing off 10 orcs with, jumping up and down on top of a tree or something.
I guess that's yeah.
Yeah.
I think it always helps me to try and get in the mood, take in a bit of I often go and just look for pictures that represent the character I'm going to play.
Yeah.
Or something about the world.
Because the rules come a time now, and I know some of those common ground analogies can fall on their face, because I know my go-to for WHFRP is, okay, well, do you know the Holy Roman Empire? And either you know your history in your Holy Roman Empire, or you don't. And I keep saying that to one of my players, and he keeps going, I still don't know anything about the Holy Roman Empire. And I was like, would you not look at a YouTube video?
Come on.
Something.
Someone made a cartoon out of it.
It's a primitive form of democracy where there's voting, but really it's not really very democratic.
What do I focus on when I'm running something? I'll focus on, I guess, making sure I've got my ducks in a row in terms of the materials I'll need to run something. I want to have the right map to because I think that'll save me an awful lot of time telling a story or setting a scene if I've got the right map. I'm thinking more about online at the moment because it's 2020, but even when I was running tabletop stuff, I'm a maker GM, I'm a terrain maker GM, so I was always focused on having just the right set of props on the table to push the game or the scene I wanted to play. Even for non-combat stuff, I'd often put down a village and kind of make it clear that it was this kind of village or that kind of village. But yeah, so having all that stuff to hand is kind of key for prep, but yeah, kind of build up a lot.
As a GM, yeah. I mean, as a GM, my usual thing, my modus operandi for most of my games is I look through the material that I think we will run through in the next two games before every night. Because at the amount of times I got stung in my early days of GMing of, okay, Brad, that's enough for tonight. And then they blast through it, and you're kind of going, okay, well, it's only 9 o'clock. We're going to play till 11.
Or like just in the first session kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or in any,
Have a backup plan, you know?
But the pre-published thing, Hida, obviously kind of saves you from some of that. You can just flip the page and go, right, didn't think we'd be getting to the orc settlement tonight, but here we are, so... Well,
they tend to be written that it'd be a long... I mean, I guess most of my gaming that I do will be in the midweek afternoons, you know? So probably starting at 7, finishing around 11. Whereas I think a lot of those starter set games, you're probably looking at running them at kind of 6 hours minimum, you know? So you generally have 2 sessions in them for your midweek game. I mean, I guess we were kind of looking at this more from a player point of view, though, weren't we?
Well, I suppose we can. I suppose I just wanted to share a couple of little bits and pieces, but you guys do get to play as players every so often. So, is there any ritual?
Well, there were bold promises made of Owen running Lancer for us here now, so I'll have to brown up on Lancer here. You know,
happy to do that. We'll put a time together and I'll get in with you. You know.
We have to fill in a gap in our knowledge and play some Lancer before we crown it as king of all RPGs. See our bracket fight episodes, folks. And on that note, I think I need to continue drinking, but you'll have to listen to that episode to find out why. Hida, when you do get to play, any sort of pre-first session or lead up to a campaign? I think I'm really talking about campaign stuff here, because you're not going to really invest yourself too much in a short kind of a 1 or 2 session adventure. But if you know you're going to be at a table with people for a year or more, anything you like to do to kind of prep for that?
What I start out by doing, usually, from a mechanics point of view, is I'll often build mechanics first and then sort of assemble the character around it. Because I like to toy with the mechanics and say, okay, I think that could be cool, or those 2 things might interact nicely. Let me take a look at that. And what I do is I go, okay, let's take a look at this mechanic and that mechanic and see can I build something that interests me? Yeah, that looks kind of funky. I like the idea of playing around with that. Okay, I'm going to play a Flame Oracle in Pathfinder, and he's going to be a goblin, because these goblin bonuses are good. Okay, that's my idea mechanically for the character. Now, what would be fun character idea for that? And then I'd have a think about it and go, I know, I'm going to play a goblin who thinks he's going to be a god. And I'm going to call him Nug the Inferniac. And he's going to run around telling things they're going to burn in the fires of the Inferniac. You know? And that's what he's going to do. And he's going to cast this buff spell that means if anyone takes fire damage from him, they catch on fire. And that's his shtick in combat. Oh, to do that effectively, I'm going to have to grab an Alchemist multiclass so I can have Vials of Alchemist Fire to throw at people. So yeah, I'll do that, and I'll need 14 int for that. Okay, so he's a bit smart, but he's silly. So yeah, we can do that. He's just a little bit deranged. He was in a war. He's got some PTSD. This is how he's handling it. And his plan is to go do the test of the Starstone and become a god. Cool. That's the character. And I would have built like that, where there's a kind of mechanic thing, and I might go back and revise some stuff. I will look about what would be cool to do, and then I build a kind of character around that. And then what I'll often do is I'll go looking for some media with a character like that. Or sometimes I read a bit of media and I store away a character and I go, that's a cool character. I'm saving him for later. I'm still waiting to play my version of Carsa Urlong, which is from the Malazan Books of the Fallen, which I kind of have slotted for an Exalted game, where you have this ridiculous barbarian warrior who is obsessed with proving himself. And I've got him slotted away for Exalted game sometime. If I'm playing Exalted, I will play Carsa Urlong.
Be a Dawncast and enjoy punching people through mountains by prove yourself.
Absolutely. Just giant sword and telling everyone, ha ha ha, witness, and driving out and doing crazy stuff all the time. And I can usually build a character that can do that kind of stuff. So most of my stuff, if my character goes, hey, I'm a great actress, my character is going to be a fabulous actress. Because I don't like picking stuff and then me not being able to do it.
I think there's a lot of value in that kind of character generation, because I think you do learn an awful lot about a system when you're building characters in it. And you can often get a lot of help. I know certainly for Pathfinder 2nd edition, there's various apps and tools. There's Hero Labs. I know in D&D Beyond, you can muck about making characters in that as well. And there's a lot of even just people have thrown together web pages for various systems where you can throw in the points to go on through to make a character. And I think you learn an awful lot doing that. The one thing I'd say to avoid when you're looking online for tools and for advice is don't just go for a build. If there's a build listed there that said this is the build, because you don't understand it. You won't understand it. And you'll be sitting there at the game and, you know that your character has this fire spell or this ability, but you may not even know what stat it's keyed off of. So once you then go past that initial build, where do you go then? Okay, there might be some advice on how you build that character up from that point and maybe take it all the way up to level 20 or whatever the top rank for the gaming system you're in is, but I don't think at any point you'll ever actually understand how that's all put together. And I've seen a lot of those builds on a lot of these things of where they might rank this as blue is the best choice and green is a good choice and yellow is you probably don't want to get near that. Red is don't touch this feat choice or whatever at all. They're very subjective.
They're very subjective. It's down to playstyle a lot of the time.
Yeah, and I've looked at a lot of them and go, how is that the best choice ever? What are you on about, you lunatic? So I think players crafting their own characters, even if you're not even going to, like, if you have time the weekend before a game, make 3 characters. Make 3 totally different characters. And I think from that you will understand a lot more of the system you're then going to go play.
It's like people get told in D&D 3.5 that Wizard is the most powerful character. And they're technically correct, but you absolutely need to know what you're doing with a wizard in 3.5 or they'll be terrible.
Yeah, if you don't take the feats to boost up your spell penetration, you're never going to penetrate a spell. It's just going to fizzle on every enemy.
Or you'll take magic missiles and be like, God, why does this suck so much? You're like, no. At low level, it's all color spray and sleep. That's what you prep. And you basically trivialize fights that way, but you don't get that. And there's a games mastery element to it and a game skill play that you've got to figure out as well as you're playing. And it's very difficult to read someone's description of how you play. You need someone who's actually a really good writer to explain, this is how you play this. And if someone does it, and occasionally you'll get it, and you're, oh wow, this has completely opened up this thing for me. Because when I was coaching people about playing CCGs, I would often do a bit of, okay, here's what you did wrong. But you have to take it through really slowly with them. It's a difficult thing you're trying to teach them higher order thinking about what they're doing. And like more than just understanding of the game mechanics, when you do something and why you do something is important as well. Like I go, do you understand why I did that? And they're like, no. And I said, well, the reason I did that was because of these 3 things that could happen. And what I did counters all 3 of them to a certain extent. Like where I put my fighter in Pathfinder 2nd edition every turn, like physically positions him on the map, matters because it controls what the bad guys can do. Even though it doesn't look like the bad guys are controlling it. It doesn't look like I'm doing anything, but I'm actually doing quite a lot. You're just not spotting it because you don't understand why I'm doing it. And like there's a big positional thing sometimes in RPGs that people ignore about where to be in a battle mat is actually really important. You don't just put yourself anywhere. You sometimes put yourself in specific places because it accomplishes things.
Yeah, that can be difficult enough to get though without play. Like I think that tends to come with experience, and for a lot of things the internet can help, but in general it's very hard for you to get. If you look on YouTube at all the real play and stuff like that, it's very hard for it to be compelling and for it to be kind of informative for the system. Like if you look at most of the ones and any of the real popular ones, they cut out all of the mechanics. So you will learn if you want to play 5th Ed D&D, if you watch Critical Role or anything like that, you will learn nothing watching that show. It might be very entertaining. You might get the general banter and all this kind of stuff, and they're also, I mean, they're actors like that. They'll do better voices than I will. But it might inform you of the general kind of banter and how a tabletop game will work, but it will not give you an iota of understanding of the rules. Whereas there will be ones that are out there that will be very dry that might be better for it. You'd nearly be looking at shorter YouTube videos where somebody might say, this is the combat section of this rule book and now I'm going to explain it. And okay, yeah, it mightn't be as entertaining, but it might be a lot more informative. So really, if you're looking about, I'd say just know what you want to get out of your viewing before you go looking for it.
Absolutely.
So on the subject of voice actors, or actors in general, certainly I think when I began playing, I would focus, in the run-up to a game, I would focus on backstory. Where does this character come from? What is their mysterious background, etc. I found myself doing less and less of that now, and I found myself kind of at the kitchen sink, wherever, in conversation, trying to figure out this new character I'm about to start playing. What's their demeanor? How do they come across to people? Because mechanically, we've discussed the mechanics at length now, but the great deal of time spent at the table for a session, you might end up spending simply talking to people. And you're not necessarily going to be filling them in on your character's background, but for me at least, I do spend a bit of time trying to figure out, how does my character talk? Not just what silly accent will I be using, I'm fairly notorious for that, but how do they like to come across, how do they present themselves? So that for me is a big part of prep now. I'll just sort of start talking about something as if I was that character. Anyone else practice in the mirror before sessions?
Well, I definitely think about, is there any kind of verbal tick or catchphrase I could toss in there to kind of hang a hook on the character, something to return to? Like, is there a principle I can return to when I'm thinking? Because sometimes you're distracted in the game and you're thinking, oh, what would my character do here? And I was like, okay, this guy he's a bit impetuous. That's what my thing is, and he doesn't take things very seriously. So, for example, I'm playing an Imperial Noble in a Warhammer game that Liam's running, and I went, okay, he's going to be called Werner von Engelmann, and he's from Nuln. And his dad is actually, a hard-bitten, kind of was a duelist, became a noble, bit more rough and tumble. And Werner's whole thing is he doesn't really take much very seriously. And the whole thing's a bit of a lark to him that we're doing. And he hasn't really gotten into a situation where stuff's really dangerous yet. And he often does things that are slightly risky and kind of tosses it off. And he comes up with ideas.
Leaves the party in darkness as he charges off to go engage a skeleton.
Absolutely.
He's the only one holding a lantern.
Not in a way that I'm ever trying to ruin anybody else's day.
Yeah, it wasn't really dangerous. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
No, but it's just like, okay, he's going to do this because it's going to, and they're like, we're going to hold at this edge of the mine and fight the goblins as they come out. And the goblins took a bit too long coming out, so Werner charged in and fought them in there. And that's his bag. And he's he's a bit of a dilettante. Doesn't really take it terribly seriously because, hey, it's all just a bit of fun.
Some systems can kind of reward that and push you towards that. I know certainly with WHFRP, like you've taken your motivation is it motivation? Is bravado?
Bravado, yeah.
So, like, that's fully in character for you to be doing that kind of stuff because it's like, ha, let's go.
Yeah. He's great fun.
Yeah.
He's great fun.
And it's nice. It is nice when a system does kind of give you some kudos for playing a character rather than simply making tactical decisions as yourself. The other thing I tend to do more now is pay attention to what other people are choosing. And obviously there's a bit of a chicken and egg there. But if for example, there's going to be 2 rangers in the party, and I'm one of them, I was like, well, what kind of ranger is the other guy or gal? And should I go the other path, or should we double down and have 2, marksman rangers or something else? Or is there a gap in the party? I've sometimes made class choices based on, well, what do we kind of need here to fill in a gap, and then worked from that end. Because ultimately, it's a team effort.
Yeah, well, that's one thing that the Session Zero can be good for as well, I guess in terms of character background and filling out your character, there's 2 ways to skin it. You can either write your 3 or 4 page background, and I don't know, when I was younger, I certainly used to be a fan of that. Nowadays, I'll probably kind of write a paragraph or 2. I know certainly when I'm GMing, I tend to give people experience for things like character backgrounds, and then after sessions write-ups, just because I think they're good for getting to know the character, both yourself and for the other players. In general, when I'm running my own characters, I tend to keep them pretty light. Like that, I try and think like, what's their mindset, what's their general background, and then I'll fill in the blanks. Like as Owen mentioned there about his noble. There, we hadn't really filled in his character's father's background at all, but we just kind of that was done with downtimes of letter writing. That his character would write a post-session write-up as if he was dictating it to his butler.
I always added the postscript: dictated, not read.
And then the father would be getting it written back, so you'd have the two scripts, and the father is quite rough as well, So it I think you can nearly have as much fun building the people often treat, oh God, to write a backstory. Ugh. And it's like, it's this tome, my parents are dead, I like adventuring, whatever. Our family's dead, I like adventuring. You can have a lot of fun with this stuff. Have fun with it. It's what the hobby's about. Keep it vague and then fill it in as you go, You just you're saying is look, I don't know that I have much to tie me into these things. Okay. And then the GM can go, well, how about next session I bring in a cousin or something? Yeah, okay, cool. You're in the inn and they go, cousin, hello. It's like, have fun with it.
Yeah, I've definitely gone away from the extensive background kind of stuff.
Keep it light, like a couple of paragraphs, bullet points as you say, yeah, great, and then fill the rest in as you go.
I've dropped the dead parents stuff. I think most people kind of tend to drop that aspect as they go along. It's like, my parents are longer dead. They're just happily somewhere else.
My last D&D character was a druid who was happily murdering his way through the dragon cult because his family was killed by dragon cultists.
There's nothing wrong with that, though. Like, the guy who's actually legitimately after vengeance is an interesting character. Because, like, yeah, it's a bit cliche and it's a bit thing, but it puts an edge on that character and it gives an edge to the player to drive play.
That's very different from, my parents are safely dead, so they can't be used against me.
Yeah.
That's the big difference, I think. Vengeance is great.
How adversarial was the play in the 90s that started to become a default play style? What were people doing to your parents? I would rather they be dead.
Yeah, I think TV writing has a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
Because you're watching otherwise invulnerable heroes being brought low by their familial attachments.
Look, it even happened in Terminator 2. How's Ralphie? Oh, he's fine. Just their parents are dead. Your foster parents are dead.
But then why didn't you see counterplay from those evil GMs? Like, did it actually happen? Weren't they going like, the bad guys like, you thought your parents were dead. They're not. I'm your dad.
That's pretty big brain, yeah. Or, I've had them on ice for 20 years. And now you're older than them. This is going to get weird.
Because I kind of like the idea of, I'm going to kind of generate some sort of pseudo plot hooks. Like, yeah, I've got a dad. This is what my dad does. This is what my brothers do. I haven't named them yet. I can name them if you want, but I mean, names aren't super important for your brother, but you can give certainly, I don't have any idea what they're like yet. Maybe I give them a one word trait and just be like, yeah, that's it. It should be kind of, it's sort of like, you steal some of the good ideas from Critical Role in terms of doing sort of like improvisational style play where you go, okay, well, I'm just going to have an idea. If someone suggested to me, yeah, I do have a brother, he's a real jerk. I don't like talking about him. That's why I haven't talked about him much until now. And that's something just to start with, and just be willing to kind of expand out your character a little bit. I don't like having everything sort of figured out at the start. I like it. I've got some space to play with, and maybe that's a good plot twist, and maybe that explains something about why this character behaves the way they do.
And it's fun to tie that to other players as well, sort of get a kind of informal agreement at the start that you're going to be linked in some way, but maybe not write the whole 2-season TV series.
It's also more natural as how it comes up. I mean, like I've worked with some people on the same team now in my workplace for 6 or 7 years. I have no idea how many siblings they have.
Yeah, it's not always the first thing you find out about people, even when you spend all day with them.
But also, if someone asks you how we met, it'll be like, I guess we met at a convention. It wasn't really a climactic event in my life. We met at a convention, we played a few games together. Yeah, that's how it went out. Yeah.
Our eyes met over a table.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how you start.
Now we're on a podcast. Yeah. That's a really interesting way of doing it. Is to sort of, instead of this, we're blood brothers from the war, is like, maybe I did meet one of these other players' characters in a previous life, but we're now together in entirely different circumstances. And it's like, this is kind of weird. We used to work in an office together, but that was like 10 years ago.
Yeah, we used to drink in the same pub.
Yeah.
We played poker in the same tournament or whatever. Like, I don't really know him, but I know his mate. Like, his mate is, I'm good friends with him. So really, they're like a friend of a friend. And then, that's how we got to know each other, They don't have to be blood brothers.
Spirit of the Century had a lot of that, didn't it?
Yeah, everyone would be
guest star in each other's books.
Yeah, everybody would be guest stars in someone's story, effectively, which is a fine way to do it. It takes a bit of time, though. And you try to. The other problem with Spirit, I find, is it asks you to come up with your best ideas immediately.
Yeah.
It's
very front-loaded.
And that's hard. Because I found myself paralyzed creating aspects sometimes because I couldn't think of one that was really good. And it was asking me to come up with one immediately that was amazing. And I was like, Well, this is a lot of pressure.
I think different versions of Traveller have done it, and certainly the last one I played, I think, was the Mongoose Traveller, and that had a section of, okay, well, how do you know each other? And you each got to reward you because you each got a skill out of it. And that was good, just do it. And it didn't have to be, like, it could have been, we served time together, you know? That was it. You didn't have to be cellmates, you could have just been in the same prison.
So, if we were still playing on real tabletops, probably the last thing I'd like to do in prep is to find a good miniature to represent my character. Now, things like Hero Forge have made that incredibly easy now. Even if you're just looking for an avatar for your Roll20 or your Foundry game, go to Hero Forge and create your perfect representation of your character. And you can download it as a JPEG or whatever. But yeah, I'll fiddle around and kind of go, well, you know, does he have a feather on his cap? Is he, what kind of dwarf merchant is he? That kind of stuff. So, finding that good representation just to be able to plonk it down and go, right, that's me. That'll be me for the next year or so. Drink in the glory of this miniature I found. Or now increasingly have crafted yourself and had printed.
Yep.
Has anyone used Hero Forge here?
I haven't, but I have gone around. Like, I know certainly when we played Night Black Agent, I looked around for who would my avatar be, and I went, yeah, okay, you know what? Here's astronaut Chris Hadfield. That's what he looks like.
Excellent. Hida, you've picked up a custom mini or two.
Yeah, I'm still working on my resin printer. My extruder printer works great, but I haven't. I've been mostly printing on the. I've got to sit down and get the resin one working for me in a way that is.
Apparently, when they work, they're just amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's all about like getting getting all the little bells and whistles right, and yeah.
Much like prepping a character. Well, I think we've covered a fair bit of ground. We've looked at the mechanics, we've looked at party composition, we've looked at tone, backstory, all of those things that we tend to do. And I think it's fair to say we've all changed our approach over the years when we're prepping for a game. And perhaps, you know, figured out where to put in the energy and where to put in the time. And hopefully we kind of see it all pay off at the table during the game. Any final thoughts?
Don't panic.
Don't panic.
Good one.
Don't panic.
Exactly, it'll work out.
Hitchhiker's got it right. Don't panic.
Yeah, and you're at a table with a whole bunch of other people who are rooting for you. So yeah, perfect. I think we'll leave it there for this week then. Join us on our Discord. Talk to us about your game prep. Or shoot us an email at party@theinventionparty. Check the show notes for all the other links. And hopefully we'll see you back here next week, fresh and ready for another episode. But for now, this party's over.
Thanks for listening to The Adventure Party. You can find show notes and links to things we've mentioned at www.theadventuringparty.net and on our Facebook page. You can leave comments there, or talk to our Twitter account @AdventurePTY, or you can record a voice message at www.speakpipe.com/theadventuringparty. We can also be contacted directly by email at party@theadventuringparty.net. If you'd like to be in touch with the party all the time, come join our Discord server, link in the show notes. The Adventuring Party is released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share Alike version 3 license.